Hello, Alok. How are you?
Hey, Said, thank you
It's
very much. It's a pleasure. I know it's early in the morning for you,
it, for
but
you. For you, it's never too early. I'm always good. I'm always good. I, I would love for you to introduce yourself to folks who might not have heard of you or know you.
sure, sure. I'm Alok Sinha. I'm based out of Bangalore and spent the last nearly 34 years of my life uh, working. I have worked in India and in the US and UK. Not stationed there, but worked with the companies there, and I've traveled nearly 60, 65 countries. And I've just written a book, Achieving Successful Business Outcomes. And that is based on whatever I've learned so far. And, I believe in the maxim, die empty. So if you have something that you can share, you should share. And I think I have the good fortune of interacting with leaders from over 50 countries and some unique nuances of what they don't teach you at business school. So, I worked for Mr. Tata. He was my skip level, Mr. Ambani. Chris Sinclair was the chairman of PepsiCo. He was my chairman too. And what has motivated me was some simple rules that they used to run their lives. And the book is about that. And I am now an embodiment of whatever I've done over the past 35 years. Ran multiple businesses globally, as well as whatever that book represents is me now.
Fantastic, fantastic. Definitely, and I really appreciate the way you're describing it, because the acknowledging the influences in our lives is very crucial, because they help shape us not only where we are today, but definitively how we look at the world, especially in a time like this with COVID and how we respond to the world. So I appreciate that. Alok, as you know, of course, the narrative is very broad. You know some of the themes: uncertainty, risk, and all the other things that we've been talking about. What's your perspective on all the things that are happening, and what do you see, my friend, and what do you acknowledge out there?
Absolutely. This is a this is a great question because, and I'll just for a moment switch to the book and the model, and I'd like to use the model to unfurl what I think about the situation. And the book is too new, and so I will use the model. I use a model called STA, Space, Time, and Action. And you'll be surprised to know that business strategies are affected by just three fundamental variables: space, time, and action. And it is true even for life. And I have read people like Herbert Spencer, he was a metaphysicist of 19th century, Einstein, Henri Lefebvre, Aristotle, if you go way back, but even the newer ones like Niels Bohr and Heisenberg, who believed in this. And so what they said was, time, space, and force defines outcomes. And I change force to action because action drives force. Now, and it's very simple. Time encapsulates value and it represents opportunity. Space defines market and it represents organizational strength. And action liberates value and it mimics life cycle. I further broke time into the business cycle, so recession, stability, growth. I broke space into own, known, and unknown. And I broke action. There are only three actions. I'm a computer scientist, so add, amend, and delete. So there are only three actions, and they are create, sustain, and destroy. And if you take these three into three, the interplay of space, time, and action, it represents 27 states in business strategy. And there is no business situation that can be outside of these 27 states. So think about this like an I Ching, and that's where I work. I have worked from. Now, the book, unfortunately, sorry.
No, I was gonna. It's a very powerful distillation of the way to look at the world, starting with the three dimensions, and then beginning to get the aspects elaborated. So definitely appreciate you saying all of that, Alok. Please share more.
So, a friend of mine, and this is because the book was released in New York. It was the last week of March. And, immediately after that, there was clampdown all over, right? Early April was chaos all over the world. And I was telling a friend of mine that, this is the worst time project. And he said, look, shouldn't matter, And he made a very innocuous remark. He said, COVID is a black swan and no model should be able to solve it because it is once in a time occurrence. And I think he was alluding to the fact that, the way to study models is to look at 50 or 100 successful organizations and distill what are the 5 key things. Now I said, no, the model that I have used mimics nature. And if it is the right model, I should be able to give directions. Now, Sai, you'd be surprised, and this is not denigrating anyone. I have been both part of a number of speaking juntas, as well as I've heard a lot of people speak offline. And I've seen a lot of these speakers using a large chunk of their previous slides. And I have seen impending digital transformation presentation, global. I have seen life in the new age, but and there are people I know. So 75% of the slides are existing slides. So now it seems that they seem to be saying that either their previous approach sufficed, although with a little bit of modification, or they are refusing to take cognizance of the change. And so when I began, I said, no, I must do something fresh. And so I applied. Now, you asked, what is my perspective? I think we are in a state of chaos. Right? Now, when I say I'm in a state of chaos, what do I mean? It means it's a situation that mutates itself into uncontrolled degradation. So the situation is mutating into uncontrolled degradation. Right? Why did it happen? It happened because of disruption. Right? The virus was a disruption. And it is true that every large-scale disruption occurs from the unknown. So I had the space-time in action. If you look at any disruption, whether it's a startup disruption, whether it's a technology disruption, whether it is nature's disruption, it always happens from the unknown. Now, the difference between disruption and destruction. So nature, when it disrupts, it also destructs, and or it destroys. And in business, when there is disruption, I mean, there are a lot of pluses and there are a lot of minuses. Everything seems to move together up into a new frame, but this is both disruption and destruction. Now, what is a credible response when the disruption is occurring from the unknown? Think about an enemy you don't know, you've not seen. What is a credible response? So you must first protect whatever is your own. Then you must move the battle from the unknown to the known, because if you fight the battle in the unknown, sure shot loss. So only when you move the battle from the unknown to the known can you fight the enemy effectively. And look at what the governments globally are doing. Simple steps: lockdown, social distancing. What are they doing? They are now moving the battle from the unknown to known by separating the sick from the guys who are fine, right? The afflicted and the non-afflicted, right? And then they can deal with these two problems separately, right? Now, and is it okay for me to go on, right?
Most definitely, and I, you're calling out many key distinctions. Moving, as you said, the battle from the unknown to the known, and I love that you're emphasizing. Really, it's simple in how to say it, and it's definitely the complexity of doing it. As you go through, definitely point out things that you would readily suggest that leaders in many form really embrace, Alok. So please do go on.
Yeah. So let's go to whenever you have such volatile environment, chaotic environment, you use the VUCA model, right? VUCA. So I used the VUCA model. I reviewed the VUCA model, but I looked at it from the space, time, and action lens. And I realized that VUCA has now become VUUA because I replaced complexity by unknown. Remember, I started by saying that the disruption has been created from unknown, so we must have unknown somewhere.
Mm-hmm.
Now, let me define what volatile environment means. So anything which is volatile is marked by rapid changes, right? Which means you either don't have enough time or enough resources to respond to that change. And volatility is a function of uncertainty, unknown, and ambiguity on the STA. Let me explain how. Uncertainty maps to time. So you are certain times or uncertain times. Unknown maps to space. So you have known spaces and unknown spaces. And ambiguity maps onto action. So, you know, it's an action which really is mixed, right? Now, today's environment, you know, there's a very strong dictum. When you are fighting an unknown enemy from the unknown space, the SWAT team has no option to exit. And I think the business must understand this. You see, when we work for an organization and you're inside a very distressed project, you have the right to throw the paper in and then walk out because you think it just doesn't make sense. You can do that because the next organization, you hope to find a project which is not in that shape. No more. Every organization is in that shape, that state, right? So the option for the leadership to exit does not exist. They have to solve the problem. So it's like the soldiers flushing out terrorists. It doesn't matter how many soldiers die, you'll keep sending the forces till the terrorists are dead. And same is true with the doctors and healthcare professionals today. It doesn't matter how many die, they will keep tending to the patients and they need to keep them alive. And this will happen the moment we see the lockdown wear out and we see that we don't have a vaccine and yet we need to go back into business as usual. Now, this is leadership without any options to exit. They will face it, okay? Now, coming back to, sorry, you had a question?
No, all good. I was going to ask, like, as you're elaborating, there is no options. You know, how do you begin to see the world in the new order, if you will?
Okay, so let's go back to our volatility, right? So we said uncertainty, we said unknown, and we said ambiguity, right? Unfortunately, uncertainty can be contained only if it has been planned for in advance, right? Now, uncertainty isn't bad. And you know, yesterday you and I, we were discussing this. Insurance companies use uncertainty to their advantage. You know, they apply risks to a possibility of an occurrence of a particular event. And if it occurs, they pay. If it doesn't occur, they make money. And remember, Bill Gates at some point in time did tell us that, you know, we're not prepared. And so at this point in time, we have not chalked down our risks, right? Now, the other problem about not planned for in advance means, you know, any unplanned uncertainty spawns many more uncertain events because you're in uncertain times. You don't know what else will happen because you're not planned for it. Now, under such conditions, you must never create a long-term strategy. The best is create short-term goals that needs to be defined at each step. So in the book or in one of my articles I did write, you can use the bell curve. If you want to look at something, a company with very thin margins, you can look at the bell curve, plan for a 3-month or a 6-month, and give 15% to achieve your initial goals, last 15% to the final 15% of the goals, and all in between. The rest in 4 months, right? So 1 month, 1 month, and 4 months. Now, if it doesn't go well, keep altering, keep changing. And that's what I had written. So, you know, you shouldn't be looking at long-term strategy. You should be looking at very short-term goals that need to be defined, right? Now, let's go to unknown. And this is true both for a company as well as for governments and health workers at large. So what is unknown? Unknown is something that exists, but it has not been discovered, right? Something like an elusive vaccine, right? Now, unknown can be cracked open only by research and creation. So if you go to the action, creation is where you can crack open unknown. So, it can be cracked by either application of mind or of knowledge, right? Now, let's see ambiguity. Ambiguity can be used both ways. It's like the Parsifal's knife, right? You can cut and you can heal. And ambiguity is when the same thing has two interpretations, both of which are correct, but in two very different frames of reference, right? And leaders normally use ambiguity in speech to motivate forces. But whenever we are in chaos situation, it should be completely shunned. And my view is we should be communicating the current state, the planned absolutely clearly. There should be no ambiguity. Sai, one of a global CEO, he asked me, Alok, is there an option to conserve so as, we can live to fight another day? And he said, why can't we trash current projections and wait for more time to make that decision? And I said, valid. It is a valid short-term action if the uncertainty has arisen from known spaces. Mm-hmm. But if the uncertainty has arisen from unknown space, like now, if you do only defense, then it's a certain strategy to lose. And, I started by saying that the best strategy during such times is to protect your own space, drag the fight from unknown to known, and then attack to decimate the enemy. That there cannot be a wait or a pause. So if someone thinks I can wait for some point in time when I can see things clearly, well, that's not going to happen, and we should not. Just one last point before I hand it over to you, because I know I've spoken a lot.
All good, all good.
I didn't talk about complexity because complexity bears out of highly increased number of components. So it is absolutely hopeless to try and ascertain the impact of every component in a system on every other, because it's just too complex. Mm-hmm. It's like an operating system. You can never figure it out, right? So complexity can only be dealt by patterns. And I have seen a lot of, so Mr. Tata used just two metrics to deal with how does it deal 99 or 100 companies and many more. So if I have to compare, so you must ask me, why did I make VUCA into VUUA? So volatility is the measure of business environment during warlike time, while complexity is the measure of business environment during equivalent peace time. Now, if the environment is both volatile and complex, well, that leads to chaos, and which is where we are. But the first one to be attacked is volatility. Most of the people know how to solve complex problems. It is the volatility which is creating chaos today. That's my initial view. I don't know whether it makes sense.
Well, thank you for sharing that, Alok. I'm interested as you're kind of seeing people and organizations embrace this unfolding reality, whatever is happening around us and wherever it's going. How are they experiencing? And I'd really like you to comment on two aspects in particular. Actually, all three elements. How are they experiencing space? How are they experiencing time? And how are they experiencing action in order to be able to navigate that so-called emerging normal and really leverage the framework?
Yeah. So, if you look at the three axes, right? It is probably the most difficult of times, right? And unfortunately, time expands when people are going through difficult times, right? It expands. And I did talk about the part that you must first protect your own, right? Now, and I have seen this happen in a lot of places, by the way. And before I go to space, I'm going to space because I'm saying you need to protect the own, right?
Yep.
And when you do, and if you look at the three pieces, creation, sustenance, and simplification, I think when the times are very difficult, you must simplify, right? And I'm seeing that. But I think there is a very large risk. So simplification means you need to first make the company sustainable. So I'm seeing large scale layoffs, mass scale layoffs. I'm also seeing people restricting all their spends to something which is very, very day to day, absolutely zero on the future side. And I think we are making some mistakes over there. And there is this great research which was done by Nitin Nohria and co from Harvard. And this was just when they were coming, just when we came out of the 2008 recession. And you can go back. I've done a lot of research on the recession. You see, the most natural reaction is to cut to the bone. Stop innovation completely. Stop sustenance also completely. It is low grade, simplified sustenance, right? And I'm seeing this happen all over the world, all over the world. I do think we should, again, defer to the bell curve. I don't think we should move so far to the right than we're trying to save all the money just to somehow keep the companies afloat. And I'm seeing this happen everywhere. I think the simplification is absolutely necessary. And this is a good time to spring clean. So, if you've got too many hierarchies, then you should contract the hierarchy, right? If you've got unnecessary locations which are open, well, you can wind down the locations because the cost of location is equally high. But we've all learned how to work from home. We should now start to leverage the cost reduction and try and see how do we work from home. We should do that, yeah. Right? But at the same time, we should continue some of our critical projects which are necessary if it is to do with research and if it is to do with hardcore sustenance, because the study says that only 9% of the companies, when they came out, and they talk about HP, they talk about Sony, and these are classic cases. When they came out, they just vanished. They just could not go back even pre-recession. And I think that's what I'm seeing, and that's what I think we should be doing. And we should move either to left or to right.
To the right. Well said, Alok. And as you look at the time component and the space component, and if I say the context, if you will, of those two components, are you seeing, and what suggestions and what recommendations do you have for people that have to make decisions relative to taking those actions? Are you finding that the challenge in making those decisions is being addressed and embraced, or are you seeing, and what recommendations would you have for those that may have difficulty making decisions in order to manifest the actions?
Sure. So on the space-time, I think it is most important that we contain ourselves to the own spaces. So, let me explain. Own spaces is direct market, right? Mm-hmm. We must reach out to the customers. We must make sure that, we are connected. This is the time to be very closely knitted to the customer, right? Known spaces are where you are operating via your partners, or, you have operations which are federated, right? And unknown spaces you shouldn't be looking at. These are disruptive technologies. A lot of people think about disrupt, unless you've got a lot of money. Well, if you've got a lot of money, this is the best time for disruptive technologies to come in. So I'm also seeing, and remember, Bangalore is a place for a number of startups. So, in a 10 square kilometer space, you get 20,000 startups. And I can tell you, automation, home deliveries, logistics, last mile, there's so much of work which is going on. It's amazing. So there is that set of those startups. I don't want to call them kids because they're not all kids, but startups who are pressing hard on the pedal to make sure they can make the best out of what restrictions COVID is imposing. But for the larger organization, I do think that they should balance. So they must take care of their customers, and I'm seeing that happen now. Of late, I'm seeing messages coming out, and people are taking care of their customers. They are trying to support at this point in time in terms of a lot of seminars, webinars, and also taking feedback from the customers. What are they facing, and is there something they can do to reduce the agony? And I know it is happening in transportation industry. I know it is happening with restaurants. I know it is happening with air travel. So suddenly I've seen a lot of these large organizations which had a 6-seater aircraft or a 10-seater aircraft. Those aircrafts are available on rental because people don't want to fly 180 seaters. Mm-hmm. And these are small aircrafts which are now available on rental. And by the way, they don't cost a lot. And so, there are new models that I'm seeing emerging. I'm seeing a lot of new things which are happening. But this is more experimental than anything else, I think. So that's on the space side. I think the time side is more complex, far more complex. As I said, that it is leadership without any options, right? Time expands when you're going through bad times, and time expands when you are not sure what is at the horizon. So there's only one piece at the horizon, right? Which is the redemption or the redeeming factor, which is when will we find the vaccine? And when we find the vaccine, look at India. Well, like 1.3 billion people. Mm-hmm. So even if we do 100,000 vaccines every day, it'll take us 38 years to complete the vaccination. So the truth is, the time is not going to it's not going to compress. It will only expand. I mean, the chaos is just and we will need to live with it. We will need to deal with it. The first thing is keep yourself alive, keep yourself, afloat, and then we can think what we need to do more. But business as usual should start happening now.
Yeah. So it's very, very it's very direct the way you say it. We are not going back. We are not going back, but rather we are moving forward. Even just the scale of having a vaccine isn't going to allow us to go back. So I definitely appreciate that. And it sounds like definitely, your perspective by all means informs as to the options of what we can do and what have you as we move forward. So I definitely want to thank you for making the time, my friend, to catch up and share with us your thoughts.
Thank you, Sai. Thank you very much. It has been a pleasure for me also.
Likewise, and I hope we can in the future we can dig deeper and definitely share more. So thank you again, Alok.
Thank you, Sai.